All right, let's put the women and children to bed and go looking for dinner. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball now as we continue our preseason content for the 25-26 college basketball season. Today, we are taking a look at 5 dark horse candidates for the 2026 Final Four. Want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. And as we continue with our preseason content for the 25-26 college basketball season, this is one exercise that I love doing every single year because people define dark horse entirely differently. People look at that term as something of different meaning. And my meaning for dark horse is this: which teams right now are not being talked about as maybe the best teams in the country starting in October and November, but maybe, just maybe, could emerge and be good enough to win 4 games in the 2026 NCAA tournament in March. That is the goal of this exercise. Now, you are going to disagree with some of these choices, but that kind of makes part of the fun of it, right? So I want to preface this show by saying that these 5 teams, these 5 dark horse candidates for the 2026 Final Four, are being listed in no particular order. And the first team on our list is the Arkansas Razorbacks, who are entering their second season under John Calipari. Now, one of the major reasons why Arkansas is on this list is because of Arkansas's returning personnel. 4 players who were a part of last year's team that went to the Sweet 16 and lost to Texas Tech. DJ Wagner, Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, and Trevin Brazil are all back in Fayetteville for another season. That is massive in this environment. That is huge in this landscape of college basketball. Here's another reason and another nugget to love Arkansas. Arkansas returns the highest percentage of scoring among SEC teams entering the 25-26 season. And if you remember last season, Arkansas started out very poorly, 0-5 in SEC play. Boogie Fland, the dynamic freshman guard last year for John Calipari, who has since transferred to Florida, was lost for an extended period of time, was expected to miss the entire season, came back for the NCAA tournament, but he was lost with a hand injury. But John Calipari, according to many, did one of the best coaching jobs of his Hall of Fame career by taking an Arkansas team that was 0-5 in the SEC to a team that had a lead in the Sweet 16 and lost a heartbreaker to Texas Tech. But you have to look at what was accomplished before that. Before Arkansas got to the Sweet 16 and lost to Texas Tech, Arkansas beat Kansas and beat St. John's, the number 2 seed in that region, in the round of 32. And one of the things that you really have to like, if you're John Calipari, is returning experience. And that is why I am so bullish on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Now, I want to point this out. Returning experience is a great foundation, but the dynamic teams that John Calipari has had at any place have been anchored by great guard play. And that is, again, going to be the scenario in Arkansas. Because John Calipari, just like he did at Memphis with Derrick Rose and Tyreek Evans, just like he did at Kentucky with John Wall, De'Aaron Fox, and a bunch of others, has a blue-chip point guard in Darius Acuff that is going to take immense pressure off DJ Wagner in Arkansas's backcourt. And John Calipari, when he was on this show, when he was on Inside College Basketball Now over the summer, immediately raved about Acuff and his ability not just to score, but to make life easier on his teammates. So if you start thinking about Arkansas now and a potential lineup, Acuff is going to play the lion's share of the minutes at point guard. We know that. We understand that. Wagner is back as a college veteran, a guy who played very well last season when Boogie Fland went out of the lineup. And we have to remember, even if his college career hasn't mirrored that of a player who's been an All-American. He was a very good player last year, and Arkansas turned it. But it was a couple of years ago that DJ Wagner was viewed as the best incoming guard in the sport. Now he's a veteran. Now he's got a blue chip point guard and Darius Acuff next to him. What about some of the other pieces here? Players always make their biggest jump from their freshman to their sophomore season. And I think a massive jump is coming for Carter Knox, who in the last two games that Arkansas played in the NCAA tournament, St. John's and Texas Tech, had a combined 35 points and 12 rebounds. He was awesome in those two games. He is going to be an all-SEC caliber player as a sophomore. Billy Richmond, another guy who's like a utility player, can do so many different things. He'll be a major force for Arkansas. Trevin Brazile also back for another season. And in talking to some of the well-embedded moles that I have in Fayetteville, the guy that has made a major impression for Arkansas here in the preseason has been Nick Pringle, who's a veteran big man with SEC experience at both South Carolina and also Arkansas. So you have to like right now the 6, 7, 8 guys that John Calipari has put together. And anytime I talk to that staff, anytime I talk to Arkansas's people, they are always talking about how much more skilled they are. They were not a great three-point shooting team last year. They're going to be improved. They're going to be better. And they're also going to be, as expected, in some major games early. Arkansas is going to play in the non-conference portion of the schedule at Michigan State the first Saturday of the season. Arkansas is going to play against Texas Tech in Dallas. Arkansas is going to play on Thanksgiving night on CBS against Duke in prime time. And Arkansas is also going to play Louisville in the ACC-SEC Challenge. Those 4 games are second weekend NCAA tournament games. And I just gave you right now Arkansas from a returning experience perspective, from a 5-star freshman perspective when Darius Acuff, and a coach in John Calipari, who again has been to the Final Four at 3 different programs. People are not going to look immediately to Arkansas when they talk about the SEC, and we understand that. You're going to look at Florida, the defending national champions. You're going to look at Kentucky, who's obviously a blue blood program in the sport and one of the programs that's synonymous with college basketball. But make no mistake about it, Arkansas has enough to win the SEC regular season title. And if you're good enough to win the SEC regular season title, and you're going to play in the type of non-conference games that I mentioned at Michigan State, Texas Tech in Dallas, Louisville at home, Duke and Chicago, you're going to be right there if you win your share of those games to be a very high seed in the NCAA tournament. Number 2 on our list of dark horse candidates for the 2026 Final Four, and again, these are in no particular order, is UCLA. Now, you may say, John, how can you say UCLA is a dark horse for the Final Four in 2026? You have them ranked 7th in the Rothstein 45. We obviously know this was a team that won a game in the NCAA tournament last year, and it's UCLA. But understand this. I don't think people are looking at the Bruins as a team entering this season in year 2 in the Big Ten for this program as a legitimate threat to play deep into the NCAA tournament and go to the Final Four for the second time under Mick Cronin. Well, I've been to Westwood. I've visited with the staff. I've taken inventory of the roster. And again, one thing you're going to see on this show is a recurring theme. And that theme is valuing returning experience. That's what I look at when I'm evaluating teams, your returning experience. And I look at UCLA last year, a team that went to the NCAA tournament, beat Utah State, lost to Tennessee in the round of 32. And I see a team that returns 3 potential all Big Ten caliber players: Sky Clark, Eric Daly, and Tyler Bilodeau. UCLA also returns Trent Perry, a former McDonald's All-American who should be in line for a breakout sophomore season. The thing that people, I don't think, are paying enough attention to with UCLA, and I'll get to Donovan Dent, the transfer from New Mexico, in a second, is this. UCLA also redshirted 2 players last year. Brandon Williams, who started at power forward 2 years ago as a freshman, and also Eric Freeney. So in terms of players in the actual program, UCLA is 6 guys back. Now let's get to Donovan Dent. Thought last year UCLA had the worst point guard play among power conference teams that made the NCAA tournament. And I don't want to disparage anybody individually, but their point guard play was abominable at times. And if you think about Mick Cronin's tenure at UCLA, Final Four in 2021, Sweet 16 in 2022, lost to North Carolina. Jaime Jaquez had an ankle injury. Sweet 16 in 2023, the Julian Strother shot, with Gonzaga. That was the year that both Jalen Clark and Adem Bona were lost to season-ending injuries. When you think about Mick Cronin's tenure, one of the reasons why UCLA had so much early success in the NCAA tournament was because of Tiger Campbell at point guard. 3 straight years, Campbell was an all Pac-12 first-team caliber point guard. And let's be honest, since Campbell left in 2023, Mick Cronin and company hadn't adequately replaced the point guard spot at that level. That has changed because Donovan Dent, you can make a case, will be the most impactful transfer in college basketball this season. Donovan Dent, you can make a case, will be a preseason first-team All-American. And Donovan Dent, you can make a case, is going to drastically raise the ceilings for some of the players that I mentioned. Tyler Bilodeau, Eric Daly, Sky Clark. Now, I was fortunate enough to work in New Mexico's region last year in the NCAA tournament, along with Spiro Ditas and Jim Spinarkel in Cleveland. And I was on the call when New Mexico beat Marquette in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and New Mexico nearly beat Michigan State in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Donovan Dent was the driving force in that team, and Donovan Dent is now going to a team in UCLA that won 23 games last year, had the worst point guard play among power conference teams that made the NCAA tournament, and returned 6 players. I have no doubt that Donovan Dent is going to be one of the best point guards in the country. Remember, there's only 6 players in college basketball who are returning to school this season who had some type of All-American honors last year. Donovan Dent is one of them. 20 and 6 dimes at New Mexico. He again gives UCLA a puncher's chance to get to the Final Four for the second time under Mick Cronin. Now, what are the X factors for this team? After spending time in Westwood during the preseason, this is what I can tell you. UCLA needs Trent Perry, who I had referenced a couple of minutes ago, to have a breakout sophomore season. He has to come into the game off the bench and be a guy for Mick Cronin. He needs to come into the game and be comparable in terms of his production and impact on the game to what Denzel Aberdeen did for Florida last year as the Gators' 4th guard when Todd Golden led that program to a national championship. That's what Mick Cronin needs out of Trent Perry. Now, what about the 5 spot? Adai Mara transfers to Michigan, so UCLA recalibrates with another former McDonald's All-American in Xavier Booker and a sleeper in San Diego transfer Stephen Jamerson. Now, Stephen Jamerson, from what I've seen, is almost a prototype of the type of big man that Mick Cronin used to have at Cincinnati when he led the Bearcats to 9 straight NCAA tournaments from 2011 to 2019. And you think back to some of those big men during that run at Cincinnati. Yancey Gates, Shek Mudge, Justin Jackson, Octavius Ellis. Those players could screen, roll, rebound, and defend. That's Stephen Jamerson. And if you're looking at a 20-minute split between he and Xavier Booker at the 5 spot, I think it's within reason that Jamerson can get 4 points and 6 or 7 rebounds. So what are realistic expectations for Xavier Booker? Xavier Booker is making a big adjustment. He's transitioning from being a stretch 4 to now a 5-man, where he can play in more space, where he can be a pick and pop threat with Donovan Dent, where he can be a lob threat with Donovan Dent, where he can extend the defense. For UCLA to go to a Final Four, it doesn't need Xavier Booker to be an All-American, but it does need production from those two five men. UCLA needs 10 and 10 combined from Steven Jamerson and Xavier Booker. Any way you slice it. So if UCLA gets that type of production from those two, and Trent Perry is a guy off the bench, 7-8 points a game, UCLA is going to have a chance to be in position Mick Cronin also added Jamar Brown, a sharpshooter from Kansas City, veteran player, great shooter. This is going to be an exceptional shooting team. I will say this. Wherever Mick Cronin is coach, the backbone has been defensive tenacity. And I'm curious to see how this team adjusts defensively, especially since UCLA is planning, because it was a weak defensive rebounding team last year, to play bigger. Eric Daly at the 3, Tyler Bilodeau at the 4, and then Xavier Booker or Steven Jamerson at the 5. But UCLA, if it gets something from Trent Perry, 7-8 points a game off the bench, and it gets 10 and 10 combined from Steven Jamerson and Xavier Booker, and Mick Cronin can be vintage Mick Cronin defensively, UCLA is unequivocally a dark horse to reach the 2026 Final Four. Third on my list, in no particular order, another great defensive coach, TJ Otzelberger. And I'm going with the Iowa State Cyclones. And just like I talked about with Arkansas and UCLA, the common theme for Iowa State and why Iowa State is on this list is because of its returning personnel from last year's team that earned a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament and lost to Ole Miss in the round of 32. Tamin Lipsey, veteran point guard, back, all Big 12 caliber guy. Milan Momcilovic, tremendous stretch 4, back. Joshua Jefferson, skilled forward, started his career at St. Mary's, back. Nate Heisey, back. A player, again, who really started to play with more confidence down the stretch for Iowa State. And if you look at TJ Otzelberger's record at Iowa State, he has been absolutely sensational as the head coach. And part of the reason why I have Iowa State on this list is because in doing this now 20 years and in seeing different trends throughout the sport, sometimes the programs that are just at bat year after year are the programs that sooner or later break through and get to that elusive Final Four. So let's look at TJ Otzelberger's track record as Iowa State's head coach. 2022, Sweet 16, lost to Miami. 2023, lost to Pitt. Before that, early in the NCAA tournament. 2024, go to the Sweet 16, lose to Illinois. 2025, 3 seed, lose to Ole Miss. As long as you can keep being at bat, you're putting yourself in position to be in position. And Iowa State returns 3 players, Tamin Lipsey, Joshua Jefferson, and Milan Momcilovic, who are all going to enter the season as potential all Big 12 guys. Nate Heisey is a bit of a wild card, and so is Blake Buchanan from Virginia, a guy that's going to have to give the Cyclones quality minutes, quality production up front in the pivot. But I think if you're looking at the Big 12 this year, what are people talking about? You're talking about Houston bringing back what they're bringing back and bringing in Chris Senack and Kingston Flemings. You're talking about BYU bringing in A.J. DeBanson and Rob Wright. You're talking about Texas Tech bringing back J.T. Toppin as a National Player of the Year candidate. And you're also talking about Kansas and Arizona, Darren Peterson at Kansas, and also Arizona with Jaden Bradley, Braden Burries, and Koa Pete. Not a lot of people are taking inventory of what Iowa State has, but you should. Iowa State has got 4 guys back who started in an NCAA tournament game last March. And that type of retention should not be dismissed in college basketball. And that's why Iowa State, I believe, is firmly a dark horse for the 2026 Final Four. We're going to step out for a second. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this is Inside College Basketball Now.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Welcome back to Inside College Basketball Now. I'm Jon Rothstein. I want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Well, we are talking now about 5 dark horse candidates for the 2026 Final Four. I have given you Arkansas, UCLA, and Iowa State. 3 down, 2 to go. Remember, these are in no particular order. And we are going to go with the 4th team on our list, back to California, to San Diego State. Now, San Diego State, under Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher, have built one of the best programs on the West Coast and also one of the best programs in all of college basketball. Broke through in 2023, went all the way to the national championship game where it lost to UConn. But San Diego State has been to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament in 2 of the last 3 seasons. Now, San Diego State last year made the NCAA tournament, but was ambushed in the first 4 by North Carolina. I was there. I did the game. Tar Heels played great. Aztecs did not. But as we look now at what I have been using as a common theme in this exercise of trying to find dark horse candidates for the 2026 Final Four, just like Arkansas, just like UCLA, just like Iowa State, San Diego State has returning experience and returning personnel. But a big difference is this. San Diego State is going to add a player in Reese Waters, guy who started his career at USC and transferred to San Diego State, who did not play last year due to an injury. 2 years ago, he averaged just under 10 points per game. So San Diego State made the NCAA tournament last year without Reese Waters and is bringing back Reese Waters, Miles Byrd, somebody I think who will compete for Mountain West Player of the Year honors, Magoon Guath, who a year ago as a redshirt freshman was the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year and also the Mountain West Freshman of the Year. That gives Brian Dutcher 3 players, Guath, Bird, and also Waters, who could all be first-team All-Mountain West. And then you look at some of the other players who are back for San Diego State, who, again, were a part of an NCAA tournament team last year. Pharaoh Compton, Miles Heide, B.J. Davis, Taj DeGorville. All these guys are back. And we also saw Brian Dutcher rectify some things in the portal. Latrell Davis, a double-figure scorer at San Jose State, is transitioning in conference. He will play for San Diego State. Sean Newman, 3rd in the country in assists, will go from Louisiana Tech to San Diego State. Could very well be the Aztecs starting point guard. And also Jeremiah Oden, a guy who's been around college basketball in multiple places, has also been added to this roster. There is a lot to like if you're Brian Dutcher. And there's also going to be opportunities for San Diego State during a quality seed in the NCAA tournament. You have 3 games in the Players Era. You've also got a game on December 20th against Arizona. San Diego State can play its way to a quality seed in the NCAA tournament, much like San Diego State played its way onto the right side of the bubble last year by what it did in the Players Era Festival in November by beating a team like Houston that early in the season. One of the things that I love about this job is the ability to go to different practices, sit in around different teams, and see their philosophies and see what they teach. And last year, I went to a San Diego State practice. I've been a bunch of times at Viejas Arena. But I remember Brian Dutcher stopping practice, and he made a point when somebody else didn't go for a rebound and there was miscommunication. He said, rebounding is the only statistic in college basketball where a player can be selfish. And the one thing that's going to translate always, especially in March, is defensive tenacity and rebounding. And San Diego State does it as well as anybody in the sport. And now you're looking at a team that is adding a little bit better playmaking with Sean Newman. And now you're looking at a team that's getting scoring back in Reese Waters and also is getting a double-figure score back in Miles Bird. I'm going to ask Brian Dutcher this, throughout the course of the season because coaches hate to do this, but I'm looking at this team and the totality of its parts. And we think about the great San Diego State teams that we've seen throughout time. 2011, Kawhi Leonard, Malcolm Thomas, Billy White, 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, lose to UConn. Then you go, obviously, to the 1920 season, the team with Malachi Flynn, who won 30 games prior to COVID canceling the NCAA tournament. That team could have gotten to a Final Four. And then, of course, there's the 2023 team with Lamont Butler, who transferred and played at Kentucky last year, with Matt Bradley, with Jaden Ledee. That team also goes down as obviously the best of this tenure with Brian Dutcher and Steve Fisher. It would not shock me if at the end of the 25-26 season, we are looking at this team because of what San Diego State has back. 3 all-conference caliber players, Reese Waters, Magoon Guath, and Miles Bird. And what is being added, that we look at the 25-26 San Diego State team as a team that is in the discussion of the best San Diego State teams that we have seen during this era with Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher. Now, the last team on my list of 5 dark horse candidates for the 2026 Final Four is a program that's been awfully close to the Final Four in each of the past 2 years, and that's the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, you might say, John, how can you put Tennessee as a dark horse candidate for the Final Four when they've made the Elite Eight in each of the last 2 seasons? It's real simple. How many teams are able to go to the most hallowed showcase in college basketball, the Final Four, and play during the first weekend in April when you lose 3 players from the perimeter the year prior? That's the undertaking that Tennessee is going to go through this year. Zakai Ziegler's gone. Chaz Lanier is gone. Jemai Mashack, the best glue guy in college basketball last season, is gone. But with that said, you still have Rick Barnes, and you still have what he brings to the table. And when you're looking at teams, and I'm evaluating teams, in order to have a chance to be a real player in the NCAA tournament, you have to have great point guard play. Rick Barnes has that in Maryland transfer Jacoby Gillespie. Jacoby Gillespie, who was the heartbeat of last season's team at Maryland that went to the Sweet 16 and lost to Florida, will fit in seamlessly for Zakai Ziegler. And when I forecasted the SEC over the summer, and I had my all-SEC preseason first team, Jacoby Gillespie was on the team. You also, especially if Rick Barnes is your coach, want to be anchored by a sturdy presence in the pivot. Tennessee has that in Felix Okpara. So the million-dollar question comes then, are you going to get enough perimeter scoring to complement your all-conference point guard and your all-conference big man? That's why Nate Ament is the wild card for Tennessee, the 5-star freshman. He does not need to obviously have the pressure on him where he is going to solely be responsible for whether or not he gets Tennessee to the Final Four for the first time in program history, but he's going to have a big hand in it. Physically, he's got gifts from God. He's long, he's wiry, he looks like a prototypical wing that Norman Rockwell would have painted if you were looking at it. But he's also going to adjust to what was the best conference in college basketball last year as a freshman. Keep the expectations at a reasonable level out of the gate. But I will say this, If Nate Ament is a guy, if he's a guy and he can regularly get Tennessee 14, 15 points during the NCAA tournament 2026, Tennessee, again under Rick Barnes, is going to be a candidate to go to the Final Four. Because I'll tell you this, the best teams that Rick Barnes has had as a college head coach have had a common denominator: elite point guard play. Rick Barnes has went to the Final Four once, 2003. Who was the point guard? TJ Ford. Rick Barnes went to the Elite Eight in 2008 at Texas, where he lost to Memphis. Who was the point guard? DJ Augustine. Rick Barnes has went to the Elite Eight in each of the past 2 seasons. What has been a common thread? Zakai Ziegler, point guard. Not worried about Tennessee's defense. Not worried about what they're going to do to opponents in terms of holding them in check offensively. At Tennessee, you've got a ferocious rim protector in Felix Okpara. You've got an all-SEC first-team caliber point guard in Jacoby Gillespie. And if you add Nate Ament to that mix, the Vols are going to be in position when March of 2026 rolls around. We will continue throughout the preseason with all of our preseason content to get you ready for 25-26. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this is Inside College Basketball Now.